Welcome back to the Pick Show on the podcast. As you may have noticed, there's no Ohio State game to pick this week, but we're still going to talk about some things that do affect Ohio State. We'll make some we'll make some conference championship weekend picks at the end. We'll run through why Austin Ward is a cash register and look at our picks from this season. But we're going to start off with a discussion about the conference championship game, guys. Doug Lesmerises with Austin Ward and Bill Landis, because Ohio State is not completely dead. And every time something like this happens, I remember 2007 when Ohio State lost to Illinois in the 11th game of the season, went to Ann Arbor, beat Michigan. The guys were climbing in the stands with roses in their mouths because they were so sure they were going to the Rose Bowl. And then all this stuff happened. And the result is that Ohio State made the national championship game that year. And I think that was probably even more complicated than what they would need now. So before we dive into this a little more specifically, Austin, are we like lying to our audience by saying, there's a chance? Or is this crazy stuff happens in college football sometimes?
Crazy stuff does happen in college football, and not just sometimes, like all the time. And they were nearly, a third or halfway there on Saturday night, if not for insane stuff that worked in favor of Alabama against Auburn and Florida choking away against Florida State. Like, it was about to be a much more real situation and potentially being just one game away from what they needed, very similar to last year's situation for Ohio State, if those things had gone their way. Now, they didn't. I looked, and Landis and I have been keeping tabs on it throughout the week just to see how real or not real. Oklahoma State's odds have gotten a little bit longer. We'll get into the details. But as we sit here right now, for the three results that Ohio State needs, it's about an 18-1 shot. So it's become a little bit longer odds than earlier in the week. But 18-1 is, in college football, not insane, especially if you're only talking about three games. And of those three, you're essentially just talking about one real upset in my mind. So it is within the realm of possibility. It is not a lottery ticket. It is not a desperation plea or Hail Mary. It's something that could happen, but it is not the outcome that is most likely.
So those three games that you're talking about are the SEC championship game, the ACC championship game, and the Big 12 championship game. But I do want to start with the Pac-12 championship game on Friday night, because Landis, I am wondering if we believe that Ohio State would also need Washington to beat Oregon. Because my question is, if Oregon beats Washington and it is one-loss non-champ Washington versus one-loss non-champ Ohio State for a spot, who do we think would come out on top there? Because if you think Washington has a real chance to be ahead of Ohio State, now we're talking about a fourth game that the Buckeyes would need.
Yeah, I know there's some national folks out there who I think believe that Ohio State would lose that comparison. I do not believe that. I think if you get in a position where you are stacking up Ohio State's resume with Washington's, I do believe that Ohio State's is better. Like strength of record, strength of schedule, game control, all of those things favor Ohio State. And Washington throughout this season has had a couple of games where, frankly, they've not looked very good. They had a game that they won against Arizona State without scoring an offensive touchdown. And really, since the Oregon game, they've, in my opinion, not really played like a playoff caliber team. Now, the resume might still get them there, and if it does, they'll deserve that. But I don't know that you look at Washington's body of work and say to yourself that that's a team that is deserving of getting in the playoff or even one of the best four teams in the country based on resume alone if they're sitting there with one loss. So I'm not fearful of that if I'm Ohio State. I guess like if you're ESPN or anybody with a vested interest in getting eyeballs, it's fun to talk about and create a little bit of drama there. But I really don't think there's anything there. I think the Pac-12 was playing for one bid essentially, unless like a lot of things go haywire. But I don't think Ohio State would be left out of it if the Pac-12 was looking at getting two teams in.
I don't know about that. I think I might disagree with that. Washington right now has wins over number 5 Oregon, number 14 Arizona, number 21 Oregon State. Ohio State has wins over number 10 number 10 Penn State, number 16 Notre Dame. Game control on the ESPN metric, Ohio State's 4th, Washington 6th. Washington right now is actually higher in strength of record. They'd fall if they lost. But I do think the idea of they have a loss, but they then would have split with the team they lost to. I think that idea of like, well, Oregon and Washington are both good. They're 1-1, where Ohio State's losses, they just lost to Michigan. Now it is a road loss. It was down into the final minutes. I'm not saying that Washington would be definitively in ahead of Ohio State. I'm saying if the other three things happen, if the 18-1 shot hits, Austin, I still think we'd be sitting there at noon, 12:08 or whatever on Sunday, not knowing for sure if Ohio State's in. I don't think we would be in slam dunk territory because depending how the Washington-Oregon game played out, I still think the Huskies would have a case.
Yeah, it does depend on how it plays out in some ways. I would agree to that to a certain extent, Doug. I think ESPN would probably be doing backflips if they get a close game in the Pac-12 title game and Oregon wins, and then everybody has to tune in to all the programming on Sunday morning leading up till 12:30. I think they would absolutely love that because people in Columbus would be locked on it. If Oregon wins this game comfortably, I'm not sure that Washington has a leg to stand on. And my feeling on that is more about the first game that these two teams played. It would look like a split. It would be a split for Washington, but they lost that game at home in one that they really had no business winning. And I think that there's a more fascinating Ohio State-centric conversation, I think, to have about Oregon's loss there at Washington with the 0 for 3, sort of the reverse Ryan Day and being aggressive in a quote-unquote matchup game. Like Dan Lanning pushed the envelope. He was roasted for the entire week after that for being too aggressive in that situation. And I've just been thinking about that over the last couple of days and getting ready for the pick show to talk about Oregon and Washington and the contrast in going for it and being super aggressive and getting burned for it with what I think were bad decisions in the first half for Ryan Day on Saturday to be conservative. You still have to be right no matter what decision you are. And both of these guys wound up being wrong, one by being too conservative and one by being too aggressive. What's the right way? I don't know, but I think it's worth keeping in mind because if Ryan Day had done the opposite and gone 0 for 2, he would have been criticized for that as well. So does come down to execution in these games. That's not an easy cut and dry answer, but I think overall my point is that Oregon largely controlled the first matchup against Washington. And if they're able to rectify that, I think that would be a knock against the Huskies.
Okay, so I wanted to put it out there because I think it's a wild card in this situation.
Sure.
As we dive into the other 3 conference championship games that really Ohio State has to have a certain result. We'll go to that Pac-12 title game is Friday night. Don't miss that. It's gonna be a good game. 8 p.m. Saturday at noon, the Big 12 title game, Texas, Oklahoma State. Landis, Texas is favored now by 15 in this game. Texas played like a really close game with Kansas State like a month ago when Quinn Ewers was out. While Quinn Ewers has played, though, they did only beat TCU by 3. They did only beat Houston by 7. It felt like for a while there, Texas was trying to lose. And, Mike Gundy is just like Mike Gundy, man. Like Mike Gundy is just a guy that I don't know that I'd want to face with my season on the line because I just think maybe he might have a little something for you. So how realistic is it to think that Oklahoma State is more than a 2-touchdown underdog, could beat Texas because this is one the Buckeyes need?
Yeah, I think the wild card nature of Mike Gundy might give you a little bit of hope, right? He's been in this game before too, so Sark is not. So I don't know how much that matters, but it is a factor here, I suppose. The thing that worries me if I'm someone who's looking for Oklahoma State to spring an upset here is that the thing that Oklahoma State has done really well all year, which is run the ball with Ollie Gordon, who's been one of the more productive running backs in the country, does not match up all that well with what Texas does defensively. Texas's run defense is very good. Their defensive line is excellent. They have really good lines on both sides. Texas does. And I don't know if Oklahoma State is up to matching the physicality of Texas in this game. But if they surprise me, and they are, then yeah, I could see Mike Gundy kind of letting it all hang out here and, throwing some trick plays in there, probably playing it pretty aggressively because I think they have to try to win this game against Texas. So it's a big spread and it's gotten bigger, I think, right, since the lines initially came out. So I think we know what the public thinks of Oklahoma State's chances of winning this game. But Austin and I were talking about this earlier in the week too. Like sometimes it does feel like the Big 12 championship gets a little weird. Like it's like maybe like the weirdest of the conference championships most consistently. So maybe you hold on to a little bit of that hope too. But it is a tough matchup. I think when you look at the Power 5 conference games, aside from Iowa against Michigan, obviously, I think Oklahoma State probably has the toughest matchup here with Texas.
The thing I think would help Ohio State fans feel a little bit better, Austin, is just like Washington has been trying to lose, Texas has been trying to lose. And I thought they were going to lose, and they haven't yet. As Landis said, like their defense is great. Their like success rate defensively against the pass and the run is just like the best in the Big 12, and it's not even close. But, Sark, there's been a knock on Sark of like, Texas is all hype and not a lot of substance, and they had the huge Alabama win. But I feel like they've had a season that's been similar to what TCU had a year ago, which is, I guess you're probably going to be the Big 12 champ, but they skated by. They barely won a lot of games, just like TCU did. And a year ago, TCU got to the Big 12 championship game and lost, but then still made the playoff because they were undefeated going in. Texas is not going to make it if they don't win. I definitely think there's a chance for Oklahoma State here. Do you, Austin?
I do. And I almost I can't believe that the spread keeps growing. What it opened at and what it's at now don't make a lot of sense to me at 15 points in favor of Texas as we talk right now on Thursday, because both of these teams are so volatile. And you look at the early season results from Oklahoma State, and even after they sort of figured it out and stopped playing three quarterbacks and rotating through quarterback roulette, which was one of the crazier things that anybody did all season, they've played some really impressive football. And then even last week, it's like, does Oklahoma State remember that they could play for the Big 12 championship game next week? Like, it's so inconsistent from week to week. And I think that Oklahoma State's best is certainly good enough to match up and beat Texas. But also if Texas does one of their inattention to detail weeks, or Quinn Ewers he's so strange to watch. He's sort of the embodiment of Texas for me, where you just go through long stretches of the game where it doesn't look like Quinn Ewers is even trying. And then he might drop a 40-yard rainbow bomb. That's one of the most incredible things anyone's ever seen. If you get, a couple drives of lackadaisical Ewers and he's not, incapable of turning the football over. We've seen him do that at times throughout this season as well. I think Oklahoma State, as Bill said, will leave it all out there. They certainly have a puncher's chance of doing it. Mike Gundy's certainly going to push the envelope. He has nothing to lose. They've played a lot of that, Big 12 versus the exodus of Oklahoma and Texas throughout the year. I think motivation will be a problem. And Mike Gundy has been known to dial up some of these that really surprise people. And I think 15 is a crazy number. And, there's a shot. I don't know why it's 500, plus 500 right now for Oklahoma State, but I think that's worth taking a shot at if you're looking at it.
Yeah, there's a little serendipity here. Like the Big 12 teams who are staying versus Oklahoma and Texas, the Big 12 teams who are leaving. Everybody in the Big 12, like including the commissioners, rooting for Oklahoma State in this game. And like in the story of college football, the idea that Oklahoma State, who's sticking around, beats Texas as Texas is going out the door, that'd be ball, man. That's just ball if that happens. So keep that in mind. We'll make our picks on who we think is going to win these games at the end of this discussion. Let's go to the SEC title game. Bill, Ohio State needs Georgia to win. Georgia's favored by 5.5. They need Georgia to win. As we've been doing our playoff picks on Kings of the North, I've been having Alabama instead of Georgia in there the whole time. Georgia is like more consistent. Carson Beck has played very well this year. They're more efficient throwing the ball. Jalen Milroe is just an explosion waiting to happen, running and throwing it. They get a miracle win last week. Ohio State fans don't want to hear that Alabama has a chance in this game. Do you think Alabama has a chance in this game, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Alabama probably has the better defense in this game. I think Bama's defense actually might be the best in the country now that we've gotten to this point. They're certainly in the conversation, so that always gives you a chance. Nick Saban always gives you a chance, and like Jalen Milroe has figured himself out. He's still limited as a thrower, but he can really bomb it down the field. I think he's better on like the more intermediate stuff than he was certainly in the beginning of the year, and they've done a better job of putting him in positions to be successful as a passer and really accentuating his strengths. And he is he might be the most dynamic running quarterback of like the last decade. Like he is like a phenom with the ball in his hands running it. Like it is a sight to behold. So like all of that gives Alabama a chance. I'm actually surprised this line isn't closer because it's technically a neutral field. I know it's Atlanta and obviously that's Georgia's backyard, but Alabama's been there plenty enough, and certainly their fans will travel. This to me feels like it should be closer to a pick'em than it is at the moment. I know Georgia's played very well all year and has won comfortably in most of its games, and Alabama is just kind of winning differently because they're not as dynamic on offense as they typically have been the last couple of years, but they're still a really good team, and this is by far the stiffest test that Georgia's offense is going to face, and Carson Beck will have faced this year. So, yeah, Alabama has got a real chance.
When Milroe played that game last year when Bryce Young was hurt, I just thought he looked like the anchor leg of a 4x1 relay when he ran the ball. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a football player be faster than this guy. And again, he's come a long way as a thrower. Austin, this is a very weird spot for Ohio State fans because A, they have to root for Georgia. And B, if everything happens, we're going to get an Ohio State-Georgia rematch in a semifinal after Ohio State fans spend the weekend rooting for Georgia. Dog mentality, Austin. Dog mentality for Buckeye Nation this week.
Who wouldn't sign up for that? I mean, come on. That was one of the better games I've covered in a long time, with given the stakes and the environment and the way that CJ Stroud played. And we all know how close they were to winning it. You know, if you put a healthy Cade Stover and a healthy Marvin Harrison Jr., like, I know that nobody likes hearing about it at this point, but like, why not? You want to sign up for that rematch. You want Georgia to win. You want to get back in that setting and let Marvin and Cade and Travion have their shot at Georgia. Throw all your support behind the Dogs and then shift if it comes to New Orleans and another, dome playoff rematch. But I have to give full marks, and he doesn't need it from me or anybody else. But the way that Nick Saban has turned around this team, I don't know what vampiric wizardry he's got going on right now, but even escaping last week I don't know how he did it. Bill and I were in the car back from Ann Arbor, and Gamecast was like, "Oh, the game's over. Sorry, Auburn's got the football." And then like 2 minutes later, I was getting 1,000 messages like, "Actually, no, Alabama won on 4th and 31." It's like that can't be right. And lo and behold, it was. So I did not watch that game from start to finish. I don't know how a team with Alabama's talent, other than like just pure Iron Bowl insanity, winds up being that close. That to me doesn't bode well for a matchup with Georgia. And I think like they've been a different team over the second half of the year, where they were more week to week inconsistent early on, but I think they've certainly figured out a lot of things here. I think Ohio State fans should feel comfortable and confident in Georgia personally.
We do have to remember, right? 2 years ago, Bryce Young had a miracle game where he saved Alabama against Auburn and then went and beat Georgia in the SEC title game. So it was like Bama was like, "Oh, it doesn't look like that Bama's going to be." I just would like to say, on behalf of the Georgia Bulldogs, we would welcome the favor of Buckeye Nation in rooting for the Dogs against the mighty Crimson Tide on Saturday at 4 p.m. So root for Georgia, Ohio State fans. 8 o'clock Saturday night, Florida State, Louisville. Florida State, Jordan Travis is out. They played the backup last week. They struggled really early against Florida and then kind of figured out at the end. Florida State is favored, Austin, by 2.5 over Louisville. Louisville lost last week to Kentucky in the rivalry game. They've lost that rivalry game 5 straight before that. I think Jeff Brom, like people might have thought, was the coach of the year in his first year at Louisville. This is probably like a toss-up game. You lose your starting quarterback. Come on. Like Jordan Travis might have been a Heisman finalist. Should Ohio State fans feel good about Louisville's chances to beat Florida State? And again, it actually helped Ohio State fans that Louisville lost last week. So now it's 2-loss Louisville. So there's no chance that if Louisville beats Florida State, they would get in ahead of Ohio State. Can the Cardinals win?
I think that they will win. I am skeptical of the Florida State offense without Jordan Travis. Who do they have back there, Bill? Henry Rowan Gardner? Is that?
Oh, they got themselves a Tate Rodemaker.
Yeah. Oh, Rodemaker, yeah. Yeah, funky butt loving. I don't buy it. I think that Florida State has been dangling by a thread, and then that was the last one that snipped. And I don't know how Florida choked that game away. Saw enough of it to really be puzzled by how really inefficient Florida State was on both sides. I mean, that time possession in the first quarter was absolutely insane in that game. Florida choking away that just does not make any sense to me. When you talk about Braum, I've seen him work miracles with less, and I don't think he needs a miracle to win on Saturday.
Bill, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Austin here. I did not think Tate Rodemaker was particularly impressive playing last week. Just kind of looked uncomfortable. Louisville's defense is pretty good. I think it's a fair question of how good are they actually? Like, are they piling up some stats here against lesser offenses? And there have been some teams that have thrown the ball on them, and certainly Florida State is dynamic at receiver. But it's just hard for me to see it without Jordan Travis. And I think, similar to Mike Gundy, like Jeff Brom could kind of let it hang out in this game too. We know that he likes to get creative. And he's also, he's coaching conference championship games and while he was at Purdue at least. So he's got some bigger game experience there, I guess. I just think that I think people might view Louisville as like a kind of flash in the pan, like lucky to be here kind of team. And they actually are pretty good on both sides of the ball. And I think have earned their way here more so than they've gotten like a lot of good breaks to put them in this game. And I just wonder about, the emotional component with Florida State, like kind of feeling like you were on a rocket ship to the playoff and then losing your quarterback. Like how much does that factor in here too? And I think the line tells us that people think Louisville has a real shot at this game. So I am likewise leaning that way.
Last one is the Big Ten championship game. And I think, it doesn't affect Ohio State because if Georgia wins, Georgia's going to be the 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
And in that situation, I actually think Michigan is probably the 2 seed, win or lose. And that it would be like TCU last year. TCU was undefeated, lost in its conference championship game, still made it, right? What were they, the 3 seed and Michigan was the 2? Like, I guess maybe you'd put, but I think, Michigan's still in that middle semifinal. Like it doesn't, for Ohio State's purposes, Austin, like this game doesn't matter. It's not like if Michigan loses, Ohio State's getting in ahead of them.
No, it doesn't change anything. Michigan has punched its ticket. It is in. Every year, it seems like there's some reason to question why the Big Ten is even having its conference championship game, especially if it's not, forget about the West and not being able to ever win any iteration since then. But if you're not going to have Ohio State and Michigan, the 2 best teams in the league, play again, what difference does it make? Michigan is going to the playoff. They're not going to be the number 1 seed in all likelihood. So what are we doing here? Like, let's give Brian Ferentz an early vacation, send him home. I think Iowa feel like they probably have more at stake. They're more motivated for this game, and like Michigan's got to just protect itself and not have any injuries. Honestly, that's the situation for them in Indianapolis.
It is weird to me that not weird, but it is funny. The other 4 major conference championship games clearly have the 2 best teams in that conference playing each other. And the Big Ten's here's Iowa.
And here's the thing, Bill. So the other thing we're going to hear in this conversation on Saturday and then mostly Sunday mornings, I don't know, if Washington loses, how are you going to punish a team for playing in its conference championship game? It is not Ohio State's fault. Yes, they lost. They had an opportunity to get in and win the East. It is not their fault that the Big Ten has never figured out that the divisional alignment for their conference championship game is insanity. They've had multiple opportunities to change it and say, well, you're right, we should just take the 2 best teams. Ohio State would gladly sign up for a rematch to play again on Saturday against Michigan. They're not unwilling to do it, and they don't have control over what the format is. I don't buy that as an argument against Ohio State. But anyway.
And the ACC and the Pac-12 both did away with divisions. And if they had not, we could not have Washington, Oregon, because they were both in the same division in the Pac-12. And we could not have Louisville, Florida State, because they were both in the same division in the ACC. So only doing away with divisions made this possible. And if the Big Ten had followed suit and said, you know what, all right, we're heading toward the 12-team playoff, we'll whack the divisions now, we would have Ohio State, Michigan, and Ohio State would still be alive. But you also have to live by the rules that your conference made. Yeah. So, what are you going to do? But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for Ohio State. So let's make our picks for these games. We have outlined what Ohio State needs. Ohio State needs Georgia in the SEC. Ohio State needs Louisville in the ACC, and Ohio State needs Oklahoma State in the Big 12. So they need one favorite and two upsets. And then you can debate whether, Oregon certainly would be more problematic for them. I think if you're an Ohio State fan, you may as well root for Washington, but we don't know exactly what that means. But let's start there. Pac-12, Landis, who's going to win? And we're not worried about point spreads because Ohio State fans in this discussion aren't worried about point spreads. Who's going to win, Oregon or Washington?
Yeah, I think Oregon's going to win. They've played like the better team for a month, really since the last time these two teams met when they played at Washington. I don't think anything about Washington is like in peak form at the moment, and it feels like Oregon kind of is on both sides of the ball. So I think Oregon wins, and actually wins kind of comfortably.
Austin?
I think here's the other part that you can throw into that, Doug. If Washington loses, right, you're fine. Like, just root for a blowout either way. Like, make sure that there's no doubt. Just a blowout. Don't want a close game. I think Oregon is more capable of doing that at this point, and I think that they will win comfortably. I think the spread is 9.5, 10 for a reason, and I would expect Oregon to win more comfortably than that.
All right. I think Oregon's going to be 0 of 11 on fourth down, and I think Washington wins.
I love it.
Big 12, Austin. Will Ohio State fans actually get the upset Oklahoma State over Texas?
In my heart, I think no. I think that Texas will win this game. I don't understand the spread. I guess I should say in my brain, Texas is going to win. In my heart, I want there to still be hope that we all get to go to New Orleans and cover the playoff. So I have put money on the Oklahoma State money line just in case for both personal satisfaction and financial gain. But I think Texas is better. I think that, when I talk about Oklahoma State's motivation for the Big 12 and the SEC exit, I mean, Texas has that too. Sark needs a signature victory. These guys know that they have to win and get in. And I think they're the more talented team. So I do think that Texas will win this game.
But that's smart. You're building your beignet budget if it happens.
That's right.
Thanks to Mike Gundy. Landis, what you got?
I always keep a little extra for beignets. The thing about this game, like, Texas should win. Texas is terrible in the red zone, which I think could matter. They're 130th in the country in red zone touchdown percentage. I think that's
Iowa stuff. Are you kidding?
Iowa's next. Kent State is below them, and I can't recall the other team that's there, but they're poopy in the red zone. Even last week, they put up a 50 burger. They were still like 3 for 8 scoring touchdowns in the red zone in that game. They just can't finish drives. So that might matter here. I think that's probably what keeps this game closer, and I think I'm not betting on it, but I think I would pick Oklahoma State to cover more than 2 touchdowns here if this is where the line ends up being. But I do think Texas is going to win, just because, like I said earlier, I don't know that ultimately Oklahoma State can handle what Texas is doing on either of the lines.
Texas blows at Oklahoma State. Okay. Texas. So that's good for Ohio State fans. I'm taking Oklahoma State. All right. SEC, Landis, who you got?
Georgia. Go Dogs.
Austin?
Georgia.
All right. I'm picking Bama. So that's bad for Ohio State. Like, there's no way that a one-loss Ohio State gets in a one-loss Georgia.
Doug, you're just like sneaking in we can still hear you. It feels like you're trying to speak.
I don't want to belabor the point on my likely to be incorrect picks. So I'm hopefully saying it soft enough that if someone tries to clip this out, it won't work. Like, what did Doug say? Did he whisper that? Did he whisper Oklahoma State? Austin, ACC, Louisville or Florida State?
Louisville. I think that they're going to win comfortably, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Bill, Louisville or Florida State?
That bird's got teeth, man. Louisville.
All right, I'm taking Florida State.
You have to.
I don't know but that's what I'm thinking. And then the Big Ten doesn't matter. So in these scenarios where we have, let's see if I have this right, Austin and Bill agree on every pick, and I disagree on every single pick. I'm on Lesmerises Island on this one. You guys have 2 of the 3 things happening that Ohio State needs. You have Georgia and Louisville, and you are not dismissive of Oklahoma State's chances. So then by this theory, Austin, you started off by saying, right, you just put together the 3 money lines of those games, and it was 18-1.
Yep.
You're saying 2 of the 3 happen and the third has a chance. I think Ohio State fans watching this should be heartened by that, right?
Yeah, that's not an insane thing, and I think personally, I think Louisville and Georgia are safe bets. So then, in that situation, you're really talking about getting 18-1 for, if you're an Ohio State fan, your favorite team to get in the playoff and to potentially boost your gambling account. I mean, that's 18-1 on one game in my mind, and I'm taking that. I think it's possible for Oklahoma State to win. They need, just like Ohio State needs multiple things to go their way, I think Oklahoma State does too. But I've seen crazier things from Mike Gundy teams, and I think that they figured out a lot of stuff offensively from the mess that was going on early in September. I thought that they have been more consistent on a week-to-week basis, of course. But if you get the best version of Oklahoma State on Saturday, yeah, you can get your hopes up. I truly believe that.
And you're creating scenarios here, just so people understand. If Texas loses, everybody in the Big 12 has 2 losses. If Florida State loses, Florida State would now only have 1 loss, but they're a wounded 1-loss non-champ, and Ohio State is a non-wounded 1-loss non-champ. So that feels like that would go Ohio State's way. And if Bama loses, it's Bama's second loss. And so 2-loss non-champ Bama is not getting it ahead of Ohio State. So again, like in the scenario that they need, again, I would hold out that Washington could still be maybe an issue for Ohio State. The one thing, Lance, you have to think about, if Ohio State fans are leaning on Mike Gundy, they're both OSU. Little brotherhood there, right?
There you go. Yeah, yeah. And he's got a mullet.
Yeah.
And his beard is a different color than his hair, which I like.
What if Ryan Day made a video like after the Ryan Day Kyle Whittingham, like last year, it was like Utah and Kyle Whittingham did that for the Buckeyes. If I were Ryan Day, I would release a video of himself wearing a fake mullet on Friday to encourage Go Pokes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what has to happen. I think we all agree it's possible, not likely, but look back on 2007 and Ohio State somehow wound up in the national title game. This year is one of the top 2. This time they're just trying to get to the 4 spot. When we come back, we will wrap up like our season-long picks on the Buckeyes and make a couple betting suggestions for the weekend next on the Pick Show on the podcast. All right, so Austin, man, I just got to say, I was not aware of your gambling prowess coming into this season. For our Ohio State picks for the year on the spread and the total for the 12 Ohio State games, you went 14-10 overall. Landis and I both went 10-14, and you wound up almost $200 ahead, while Landis and I are both more than $100 in the negative. I just need to know for real, are you good at sports betting?
I am, and please don't tell my wife. I've had a very good college football season. I have weirdly also recently discovered that the NBA can be profitable, and that's not good for me moving forward. Or maybe it is really good for me. I don't know. I've not had an opportunity to do it. I used to go to Vegas a lot when I covered Wyoming, and I have a predilection for gambling, and I cover sports for a living. It's like, I'm really enjoying these multiple opportunities to go down to Vegas and bet on sports. And I should probably only do that instead of playing craps. But that's a lesson I never actually learned when I was younger. But now I don't have that problem. I just have an app that lets me gamble whenever I want. And I'm enjoying it. Now I'm going to knock on wood. It's been a good run. I'd like to keep it going.
And Landis, on the other side of that, are you and I just bad at this?
I've had outside of my picks here, I think I'm 500, or I'm a game under 500. I think on my college football, like the bets that I've made all year. So I'm a little better than what has been represented here, but still not very good.
So Bill is minus $156.55. I'm minus $117.82. Austin is plus $196.82. That's based on all of us making $5 $10 bets every week. Bill, just in terms of Ohio State, because that's the team we're supposed to be the expert on, you and I are under 500 on our Ohio State picks this year. I think a decent chunk of it was they wound up going under a lot this year, and I think you and I were riding the overs for like a longer time than Austin was. Austin kind of realized what's going on here. I think I would say I don't know that I ever got a handle on this team completely. Would you say that, Bill, as in terms of trying to figure out week to week what they're going to do, how well they're going to play, what it's going to mean for the line?
Yeah, I don't know if my record does reflect this, but I do feel like I had a better handle on it in the second half of the year. I don't know that I'd say that I ever had a great handle on it, but yeah, it was hard. It was hard to figure out like, oh, the defense just isn't going to give up touchdowns, and the offense isn't really going to ever break through to start scoring like 35 to 48 points a game like we're accustomed to. And I was slow to come around on both those angles, but I think over the back half of the year I was a little better with it, but even in the Michigan game I wasn't quite on it, I don't think. So no, it was a little hard to get a handle on them this year.
We were all right, at least last week, Austin, on the over, right? I know I was definitely talking to some people, in the press box before the game who were like, oh, I think it's going to be 17-14. And it's like, we had talked about like this game, the Ohio State Michigan game had gone over, whatever it was, 9 straight years. And even as good as those defenses were, I don't know that any of us ever thought that it was just going to be like, nobody can score, right? So I think the game script actually was not that different than what we expected. It's just like the early mistake for Ohio State kind of changed the view of the game as it happened. But I think a decent amount of it sort of was kind of what we thought, right? And by the way, you also hit an unbelievable 4-way quarterback parlay that was like riding a roller coaster. It was McCarthy under this, McCord over that, McCord over this. And I was like, I didn't even think it made sense. And then the game ended. I was like, well, everybody lost all their Ohio State bets. That was going back through. I was like, no, you won. Ohio State lost the game, but you won a bet that was basically McCord will have much better stats than McCarthy. And it was like plus 650. You're a freaking genius. I'm just going to bet everything next year when we do this show. I'm just going to let you go first. And I'm going to be like, what do you know? I just picked the exact same thing Austin did.
Doug, I went first on all the bets all year. You could have done that already.
Now I realize it. Now I realize.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to those guys, I guess. The money spends the same. Here's the other part of it, Doug, is like, you look at the record and obviously that's what it's a thumbs up or thumbs down. You win or lose the bet. You look at your record, Bill's record, even my record. There were a number of weeks where it came down to one play, even last week. Now, if there's better blocking on the last play, that's a different outcome for the game. It looks like Marvin Harrison's wide open, but even if they make a field goal, no, we talked about this. Nobody wanted to like hope that Ohio State covered 3.5, but they're one missed field goal away from a cover as well. Like gambling is still hard. Like I know that number looks really good over there for me, but it's difficult, and they set these lines for a reason, and they build huge casinos and they keep giving away bonus bets for a reason. Like it is hard to win. So I don't know that it's for any of us that it means that we had a like really bad read on what this Ohio State team was, or a really good read on what they were. Like there was a touchdown drop in the Notre Dame game. We could point to a number of weeks where there were things that just like didn't quite go. Marvin being pushed out of bounds in week 1 against Indiana. I mean, all these things that are fine margins like make it difficult to do. So I guess I would say you guys just need to keep your head up because there's still bowl season, still bowl season to get it turned around. And you're right there on the brink of greatness. You're on the edge.
Yeah. Sometimes, Harlan Barnett kicks a 54-yard field goal instead of punting the ball like he should.
I had that down here. Segment 3, Austin pep talks Doug and Bill through their lousy.
And it was weirdly going to get cut. That's why I moved it up to segment 2.
Yeah. All right, so let's make our picks then. We are just going to do 2 picks here. We said like make kind of like a pick on a game, more of a straight up spread pick or a total pick, and then we like the wacky parlays. So Austin, respect.
Yeah.
Tip of the cap. We'll start with you as always. What are your 2 bets for this championship weekend?
Yeah, I do think, as I mentioned, there's really good odds to take on Oklahoma State. I'm already on that in real life. I think Louisville is a very good opportunity on the money line as they're the underdog in that game. But the game I'm most confident about, and maybe Nick Saban will make me look like a fool, but I think Georgia is primed and ready for this one. They've been on a little bit of that slow build, maybe more what we thought what Ohio State would look like as the season went on. Carson Beck did continue. I think he probably progressed more from start to finish than we can say Kyle McCord did. And the proof is out there for that with Georgia. And Nick Saban has a knack for finding a way to win in Atlanta and to pull out results, and has often, been able to beat his former assistants. But I think that this Georgia team is a different animal, and I think that they will cover 5.5 in Indianapolis. Here's what I'm on alert for. I have to do it for one. This was the year of making money on Iowa. I don't think Michigan, as I said, they don't need to win. They need to protect themselves. They need to rest up for the playoff because they're in. And there also is a body blow factor that we've talked about for the week after playing Ohio State and how that wears on you. I wanted to make this more elaborate than it was because Iowa's point total was 0.5, and they were getting plus odds to score in the first half, which it makes sense, but that seems crazy because Michigan is not motivated, and all they have to do is kick a field goal, which I believe their defense is capable of setting them up with field position to do that. So I think that Iowa will cover 22.5 and the under will hit of 35. It's not the craziest thing I've done all year. It's only around plus 190, I believe, on DraftKings as of right now. But, I've made money. I want to keep my money. I don't need to go. I don't need to go crazy, but I do have to make one more Iowa bet. And so I've done it.
This is like Final Jeopardy, Landis. He's so far ahead. He's betting like $1 on Final Jeopardy. And you and I are like, here's a 9-way parlay at plus 4,000 to try and make up ground. Oh, very right. Magnanimous. I'm not next, but I don't even want to reveal my picks. Burr makes us send them the day before. I don't even want to reveal my picks now because I'm not going to end up doing the thing that Austin and I agree that I should do. But Landis, you go ahead first.
Sure. My first pick, my kind of straight bet for a championship weekend is a game that we have not talked about, the MAC championship, which is on Saturday, Miami, Ohio against Toledo in Detroit. That game is on ESPN, I believe. If you want to second screen it with the Big 12 championship while you're cheering for Oklahoma State, you can certainly do that. Miami is playing without a starting quarterback in this game. Brett Gabbert got hurt a couple weeks ago, so that's a factor. But Miami is also 9-3 against the spread this year. And looking through Toledo's schedule in the MAC, 4 of their 9 MAC wins, were decided by a touchdown or less, and this game was close the last 2 times these teams played. So I don't know that I love Miami to actually win this game, but I think I will take the 8 here and be able to lose by a touchdown. I know Berm is upset.
Look what our producer's doing to you right now.
Oh yeah, Toledo.
TOLEDO.
By the way, and Berm is right here. Landis and I talked about this game on Kings of the North on Monday, and we talked all about DeQuan Finn and Penny Boone and how much we like Toledo. And then Landis is like, Miami.
I don't think Miami's going to win. I think Miami's going to cover because Toledo likes to live on the nice edge. And Berm, don't pretend like you're confident in Jason Candle to win this game handily because I know you're not.
Berm, pick it. Tell us. Shh, he doesn't want to say it.
Listen. My opinion on Toledo's ability to win big games is well known, but this year they've handled their business, and the Rockets are going to win this game by 2 touchdowns.
Okay. I'll book that. I'll book the bet for both of you guys on this one.
Okay, I appreciate it. My parlay is belief in Oregon to I think win the Pac-12 championship in impressive fashion. So I'm parlaying a couple things here. Oregon minus 9.5. I did consider an alternate line there, but I figured I'll just keep it at 9.5. Tez Johnson, Oregon's receiver, over 75.5 receiving yards. He's averaged 130 over the last month. He's kind of emerged as a kind of secondary receiver playmaker for them, opposite Troy Franklin. Dylan Johnson, the Washington running back, under 82.5 rushing yards. And then Michael Penix, under 300.5 passing yards. He has averaged 266 yards per game since the Oregon game. So I think Oregon, like I said, wins this game comfortably. I don't think you see the best of Michael Penix, and I think you're going to see some offensive fireworks from Oregon here. So it's plus 700 on DraftKings for those 4 legs to hit.
Nice. Okay. So that's a good one. So I forgot to make picks. We'll just end the show there. Thanks to everybody.
Whoa. Disagree.
I've seen them.
I know.
They exist.
They're in the Slack channel. All right. So they wound up being both exactly opposite of Austin. So I'm going off of the Iowa-Michigan showdown in the Big Ten championship game 2 years ago that Michigan won 42-3. Donovan Edwards threw a 75-yard touchdown on a halfback pass. Like, they came out ready to roll in that one and dominated Iowa. I still think it's possible that Iowa's defense is excellent, but they kind of were playing horrible Big Ten West offenses for the back 2/3 of the season. They did lose 31-0 to Penn State, and Penn State, as we saw, was a non-functional offense, and they scored 31. And there's things happening in that game. Iowa's defense has been better than that since then, but also Cooper DeJean is out. And so I don't know. My score for this Iowa-Michigan game is like 38-0. So that's over the 35. So I'm over the 35, but like I'm already chalking it up as a loss. I don't even know why. Like I just chalk it up. So it's minus 108 on DraftKings. I felt good when I made the pick, and then I felt bad as soon as Austin revealed his. And then the other one is I'm on the opposite side of Georgia-Bama. I have a Bama believe-in parlay that it doesn't require Bama to win, but it's Jalen Milroe over 219.5 passing yards, Jalen Milroe over 1.5 touchdown passes, a Bama team total over 23.5, and then Bama with the points, getting 5.5. This is all based on Bama being explosive. Like Jalen Milroe is like the most explosive quarterback in college football, basically. And so if he makes like 4 great plays, then I think like you get a lot of the way toward this with the team total, with his individual stats and that kind of thing. And I do just think it's a game. It's only plus 350 for all that stuff I threw in there.
That's surprising. I thought that'd be higher.
I know. I thought it would be too. What am I doing? I don't know. We were so excited. I had my Big Ten Thunder parlay last week. The first 2 hit. And then we got there on Saturday, and Lance is like, hey, I rode with your Big Ten Thunder parlay. Man, this thing might actually work. And then, like, the last 2 games weren't even close. Rutgers, Maryland went over by 40 points. So I don't know. Like, it was horrible. It felt good. I hit half a parlay. Do you get half the money for that, Austin? Do you know? Can I call the sports book?
When we start one, we'll consider that. That's the next step. But there are more like DraftKings and ESPN Bet are offering some insurance where if you get all but one leg, you can get your money back. But halfway, probably not going to happen. No,
I need the insurance on when you go 0 for 5 on a parlay. Can you get your money back? So
there should be that, because it's harder to go 0 for 5 than to go 3 for 5.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's my pick. Again, it winds up being on against Georgia and against Iowa, which has not worked very well for me this year. So like the bottom line is there are games to watch this weekend, and I can remember. I don't even know why I was there. I guess I was in a hotel. I was picking my daughter up at college when Utah beat USC last year, and just like sitting in my hotel room being like, hey, like it's on. So the thing about this program, Austin, is that it has come back from the dead multiple times. They've also, like, the history of the playoff of the 14 playoff era is that Ohio State has been involved more than any other team. No team has finished 5, 6, 7 just out of the playoff more often than Ohio State. You know, they still came down. I thought in 18 they were going to make it. Like, we showed up in the room at the Woody and like they were unveiling it, and I thought I was going to say 4-seed Ohio State. It didn't. So like that, like they've had dramatic unveilings on Sunday, and there is at the very least the chance that they get to that point. So there's a lot for Ohio State fans to be interested this weekend, even though they're not watching the Buckeyes.
Yeah. And I would say that like there's been a ton of conversation about Ryan Day and obviously losing 3 straight in the game, and like people that are upset and wondering about the future with him, even if they don't think he's going to get fired. I would say that this weekend, the fact that there's still a chance after losing in the rivalry again is a reminder that him handling his business against every other team in the Big Ten is a big deal, because you don't remain in the picture if you don't have any of those other albatross losses hanging around your neck. And that, you know, I understand that that's a like very narrow silver lining for Ohio State fans that want and need the Buckeyes to win the game every single year. But the fact that they continue to be in the discussion is because he handles every other opponent on the schedule. Like that is important. And especially when the playoff field expands, like what would have to happen for them to never be in the top 12? It's hard to even imagine that right now, because they continue to do the things that they need to do against everybody else on the schedule. Does he need to start beating Michigan again? Of course he does. But this weekend should be a reminder that the situation could be a lot worse than it is.
And it is one of those things, Landis, like the rivalry is the rivalry, and you can't lose 3 in a row. And that's the primary thing for Ohio State right now. But when you look at it from like a sterile committee perspective, it's like What do you think of the Buckeyes? Well, they had a very competitive loss on the road against an undefeated number 2 team. Ohio State had an opportunity to win that game in the final minute. And like when you think about it that way, right, they obviously need a lot of help, but it's not a terrible resume. They have very good wins over 2 top 15 teams in Penn State and Notre Dame. And when you just think about it like that way, you know, that's why they're around.
Yeah, and I think too, if you're in that room considering Ohio State, if it does get to that point, like this Michigan game was much more competitive than the previous two. This was the most 2 good teams played. One of them had the win, Ohio State Michigan game that we've seen in the last 3 years, and I think that matters for the committee as well. They're not caught up in the whirlwind of Ryan Day needs to end this rivalry losing streak. Not that it's not a valid conversation. It's just not in that room as it pertains to Ohio State potentially getting in here. So I think that's important to keep in mind as like Ohio State fans think about this, because I know it's hard to maybe compartmentalize the feelings coming out of the Michigan game, but those feelings aren't at play here when Ohio State's trying to get into the playoff field.
And obviously, everybody knows this is going to be a completely different conversation. Austin, as you said, a year from now, the whole thing about Ohio State, it has been the case for the last several years. There's 2 paths. There's 2 tracks. It's almost 2 different ways to evaluate the program. There is the national championship contender, get in the playoff, play well on a big stage against national teams. And there's the beat Michigan path. And they kind of intersect, but they intersect less and less because they're not that related to each other anymore. And you can decide which path is more important to you. But they're really kind of separate. Right now, if they had done the Michigan thing, they'd be in Indy this weekend with a guaranteed spot in the playoff. But a year from now, man, like it's going to be really separated. So it doesn't excuse the one. It does not excuse the one. And for Ohio State fans, that's where their minds are right now and where they should be. But the other thing exists in a world where Boo Corrigan, is it Boo Corrigan? Is that his name? Is that the guy who still does it? Where Boo Corrigan is like, Boo, how do rivalries factor into your sterile evaluation of a passionate sport? And it's like, we're robots. We're trying to be like, think like computers. And so it's just a tough loss on the road. All right. That's it for our pick show. Enjoy watching these games. If you decide to watch them, if you don't want to watch them, you know, just like look at our YouTube feed and we'll tell you what happened. like if that's what you want to use this feed for, it's like, hey, you going to watch the show on Monday? It's like, yeah, I have no idea who won those games. I want Austin to tell me if Texas won or not. So like Austin will be here for you. So we'll continue to have shows. We have all kinds of stuff happening. The transfer portal, recruiting. There's a lot going on with Ohio State. We appreciate you guys joining us for everything we do. For now, Jeremy Birmingham, thanks so much for making the show look good. He's Austin Ward. I'm Bill Landis. No, I'm not. He's Bill Landis and I'm Doug Lesmerises. And that was the Ohio State Pick Show on the podcast.